Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Steph Littlebird, who is an illustrator and an artist. And she has been doing all kinds of paintings about indigenous uh, indigenous people. And actually, I'm just going to let you talk about what it is that you create.
Sure. I am an indigenous artist. I am from the Grand Ronde Confederated Tribes of Oregon, and my traditional homelands are in the Willamette Valley, which includes Portland, Oregon. And so much of the work that I do is related to my community as well as the broader indigenous community, and really just trying to make depictions of contemporary indigenous culture because we really don't have a whole lot of representation of Native people today. Most people know natives as, coming from a black and white movie or something. So much of the work that I do is really trying to remind people that we are still here. And so the work that I do is usually a depiction of indigenous life in some way.
Hmm. And you have recently actually been an illustrator for a book. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, so my very first children's book, I'm a fine artist by trade. I went to art school for painting and printmaking, and then just a couple of years ago, I was like, I'm gonna teach myself how to use an iPad and learn how to do digital illustrations. And then just by some lucky chance, some publishers saw my work on Instagram and basically approached me to work with Carole Lindstrom, who is an Indigenous author. She wrote "We Are Water Protectors," which is a Caldecott winning a book. And so I knew of her already. My mom thinks she's a famous lady. So I was like, oh my gosh, I have to work with you because my mom knows who you are. So she invited me to illustrate her story, My Powerful Hair, which is basically about a young indigenous girl who is learning about the power of her hair and her through learning about her culture and also the history of Indian boarding schools in America. And so the story is a really special sort of journey of a child learning about their heritage and sort of reclaiming identity. And yeah, it was such an amazing opportunity to help Carole tell that story because it's really her story. And to bring that to life was just like such an honor. And for it to be my very first children's book was just like a dream come true. So yeah, it was really fun.
Had you been wanting to illustrate children's books for a while?
I think that I had always thought of it. Books were really impactful on me as an artist. Those are some of the first pieces of art that I fell in love with were children's books. One of my favorite illustrators as a child was Stephen Kellogg, and he used to do those just like really elaborate and ornate children's books that were like you could just be immersed in them. And so to be able to tell stories in that platform in that way was like it felt like a natural progression of my work. And so yeah, it's kind of like a dream come true in a way, and a dream almost like too big that I thought I could never touch. So it's really cool to be part of it.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Um, and the story itself, you hear a lot about these boarding schools and the horrors that these poor kids went through. So it must have been wonderful for you to hear that story and just get right into it. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, as part of my work outside of being an artist, I actually teach people the indigenous history of Oregon because that's where I'm from. And Oregon was actually home to the second Indian boarding school in the country. And so it was built about 10 minutes from where I grew up. And there are many of my, relatives who were, in that school or tribal members that I'm related to who went to that school. And it's actually the longest running boarding school in the country. It is open still today. It's been open for 125 years. And so the work that I do outside of my work as an artist is educating people about that. So to get the opportunity to help tell this story was like, really truly a gift from the universe, because it's this sort of crossover of something that I already do as a native person working in the world. And so again, it was just like, it just truly a kismet opportunity. Just, it was like really a gift from the universe for sure.
Wow. So did you actually have to do any research at all for when you were creating your artwork for the story?
Yeah, so it was a great learning experience for me, because I know Oregon's local history of boarding schools, and sort of learning about Carole's experience and her family and the school that they went to was in a completely different part of the country. And so it was actually run by a different church, whereas out in the Pacific Northwest, the Methodists were tasked with assimilating the Indians on reservations. Whereas where Carole's family that went to that boarding school, it was run by Catholics, and so they had completely different outfits that they were required to wear, uniforms, and so it was like learning about the specific uniforms that they had to wear, and learning about that specific process for them was really interesting, because it is true that every native tribe has its own unique sort of experience with colonization. And so I did have to I took feedback from Carole, because she has images of her, her aunt and her mother going to these places. And so, I had to really reflect her specific story as opposed to the one that I'm, most familiar
Oh,
with. So yeah, it was a
wow.
great learning experience.
Wow, that must have been really fascinating.
Yeah,
Huh,
it is. It's interesting. So much history.
right. Okay, and you're drawn to doing this type of work because you are in that tribe, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, for me, it's like, especially coming from the Pacific Northwest in Oregon, there is this popular sort of colonizer myth of the Oregon Trail, which is like sort of repeated ad nauseum throughout a child's education from K through 12. And as a native person growing up in the region, that those histories of indigenous people were not taught in the classroom. And so as a native person in the classroom, as a young person, we didn't hear those histories. And so for me to be the person who gets to now share those histories with students and teachers and all kinds of organizations, it's like a really cool full circle sort of moment to be able to like recognize that the history was missing as I was growing up, but that it's actually now it's in classrooms now, and they're inviting native people into classrooms to tell those stories. So it's really exciting to be part of this generation that's sort of seeing the reemergence of our culture.
That's very interesting. I know, I'm just kind of curious as to the type of U.S. history that was taught in the West as opposed to the East, where I'm from. And
Mm.
I remember when I was in junior high school, we were taught about the indigenous people, and which is kind of interesting because I went to a very progressive high school, junior high school. And high school, I was in a progressive area, and we were taught about that. And they, we ended up, or I ended up actually starting a fund for Save the Children, which went to supposedly I'm hoping it did, went to indigenous children, and which was kind of interesting. So we actually did learn about the some of the plates
That's
that
cool.
they had, so it's kind of interesting that you didn't learn
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah, I have to
um
always tell the story of being a student in a classroom where a teacher said that my tribe was extinct. And so that was that was the knowledge at the time, was that the tribes of the Pacific Northwest did not exist anymore. But in fact, we did, because I was was sitting there writing class, but it was very confusing as a young person to be told that the person that I was didn't exist, or that my ancestors or my elders didn't even exist, and really the fight that we had to have with the federal government to sort of gain that recognition back from them. So yeah, it is interesting how it also depends on where you are, right? Like you're mentioning progressive. Well, I came from a town of 500 people in the middle of, a rural area. So much of them were conservative and, promoting indigenous presence isn't really something that's on the radar of conservative people because they were very attached to that colonial myth of manifest destiny and the Oregon Trail and pioneers, discovering the Pacific Northwest, a pristine land with abundant resources and no native people,
Oh,
So,
interesting. Wow.
yeah.
Okay. So, very interesting. So we talked a little bit about your latest book. Can you tell me a little bit more about My Powerful Hair?
Yeah. So the book itself, I approached it as an artist as wanting to sort of, tell the story. It is just, we're telling a story for children. So approaching it from that of a storyteller, but also like thinking about those representations of indigenous people and how, in my own experience, how I have seen the lack of representation, I really made intentional decisions about the book, including, sort of the intensity of colors in the book, as well as like trying to represent abstract concepts that people outside of our culture may not be familiar with. So this idea that we're connected to the land, that we're
Mm.
an extension of the land. So this book is like really at the core of these stories, within this narrative that Carole created, is this idea that we are connected to the land directly, and that we're connected to each other through, through the land. And so I wanted to create illustrations that sort of spoke to that. And so you'll see lots of like, there are combinations of, human figures mixed with the land. Like there's the head of a woman who is at the top of a mountain essentially. And then, there's an image of an elder whose hair is full of animals. And so I really tried to communicate those cultural concepts of connection to nature through the illustrations, and then incorporating what I'm known for, which is the bright colors. Bright colors for me are inspired by the contemporary indigenous. Oh, sorry, my dog is barking. The contemporary indigenous powwow. If you go to a powwow today, you will see neon colors all over the place. You'll see just bright and, like very contemporary palettes. And so I wanted my illustrations to really be a reflection of contemporary indigenous culture, which is so vibrant and alive and beautiful. And since much of the representation people see of us is in sepia tone, black and white, that the bright colors I use are a way for me to combat people's preconceptions of us, and like
Mhm.
remind people that we're here, we're still here, and we're a vibrant culture that is very much still alive and thriving.
Is there a way that you could show us some of those pictures?
Um, oh my gosh, I'm not, unfortunately not right now. I'm like trying to think about it. Yeah, I'm like, I could send them to you afterwards if you wanted to share them that way. But yeah, that's,
Like, do you have a copy of the book with you, or
I was like, hold on, let me see if I have one near me. I do. Do you mind if I go grab it real quick?
no? Go right ahead.
Hold on one sec. Okay, I'm back. All right. So this is the cover of the
Great.
book. And then one second, let me show my one of my favorites. One sec here. This is one of the most popular spreads, is
Wow.
this elder, and then her hair is full of animals. And the words say, our ancestors say our hair is our memories, our source of strength, an extension of us. And so, I really like, the idea of strength is very much also tied to animals, like, this sort of uh traits that we associate with animals. And so wanting to illustrate those connections, like I was saying, this cultural connection that we have. Hold on one sec. This is another spread that's in the book, but it's also the hardcover. And another idea of us, like me trying to communicate this concept culturally of being connected to the land. And so having a body that turns into a mountain that also turns into a river. Because one thing that I think Carole says this a lot, and I really believe it too, is kids get it. Kids are so smart, and they haven't been like worn down by all of the BS that adults put out into this world, and they get it right off. They understand those sort of abstract connections that I'm trying to make, and they get it just like really fast. And so that's what's cool about making books like this, is that we're speaking to the next generation, and really all I want them to know is how special they are and how powerful they are, right? So for me, it's like this secret opportunity to teach them about themselves and share those sort of magical things that they may not have been told yet about their connection to the world.
Right. That's wonderful. And those pictures behind you are all your drawings as well.
I was gonna say, some of these are. This is a friend of mine who is a
Okay.
Mexican artist, but this is a painting as well. These are my paintings here.
Right. Okay. Wonderful. And the use of color is fabulous.
I try.
Okay. So, do you think that readers are sometimes drawn to books by their covers?
Oh yes. I think I before I became a book illustrator, I always loved book covers. Like sometimes I don't even need to know what's inside a book. I just want it for the cover. And
Yep.
so I know personally that I love a book cover, but I now that I actually just finished a book that hasn't been published yet, but it's with Lori Goodluck, who is an indigenous author, and it's called Fierce Aunties. And so it's about the relationship of, a young indigenous girl with all of her amazing aunties that she has in her life.
Ah,
And I just like, I just love depicting those things and sharing things that will engage with a person on a deep level. And so trying to reduce that into a book cover can be like really tricky. But
mhm.
I look at all kinds of things now that I'm designing book covers, and because I really want it to I want it to like jump off the shelf into their hand. I want a kid to be like, I have to see what's inside of that thing. So, for me, it's like I want the book cover to be as representative as it can be of what the sort of explosion of ideas inside will be. So
Mhm.
I try my best to really like create dynamic compositions that are going to make a person go, I have to see what's inside. So yeah, that's always when I'm thinking about covers. I'm definitely thinking about that. And I mean, now that I have been in the publishing world for a little bit of time, I can see just how important covers are, and how, it's like you're standing in front of a million books on a shelf. The cover can make your decision on what to buy. So I know that personally. And so yes, covers are super important, and there's a finesse to them that I'm still learning, but I do think they're really powerful, and they're that first opportunity to engage with your reader.
Mhm. That's very true. Okay. So what were the steps that you took to bring your last cover or last book actually from beginning to the finished product?
So initially, how it works is that the author has already written a book, and they're looking for someone to illustrate it. And so what will happen is I'll get sent a manuscript, and I read it and say, is this something that I think I can bring to life? Is it an story that seems appropriate for my work? And then assuming that I accept that, then we basically go into sort of the ideation phase where they say, you just, you make it up, basically. You tell us what goes on all these pages. And then, so I'll send a sort of first draft of what my ideas for each spread will be. And then the publisher and author, they look at that. And when I sketch, it's only in black and white. So no color at first, it's just all line work. And then through sort of multiple rounds of feedback, usually you sort of, you know, hone in all of those details, clarify that narrative, and get the artwork in its black and white phase, sort of where you want it to be. And then once the line work has been approved by the publisher, that's when you start the color work. So you get through the sort of black and white phase because it's just easier that way than putting in color and having to change all those details as well. So, once you approve the black and white, then starts my favorite part of the process, which is making everything come to life through color. And so the color process takes a really long time because it's just like so many layers and details, but so does the line work part. So it can take somewhere from 3 to 6 months just to get through the artwork phase of it, let alone all the stuff that sort of leads up to and comes afterwards. But the author writing the book, it could take 2 years for the whole thing to happen. So yeah, it's a long process, but it's like a loving process that takes a lot of feedback and sort of looking at it from many different perspectives and different viewpoints to make sure that we get it right and we are telling the story as sort of most impactfully as we can. And so, yeah, it's a process of collaboration, really. That's how I see it. As much as I'm an artist, I'm also like having to collaborate with many different people who, sort of have their own visions of the book as well. So, yeah,
Mm.
it's an interesting process to negotiate, especially as being like a fine artist where, I could just paint a painting and it could be whatever I want it to be, and no one can tell me where to put the next brushstroke. But in the case of a book, you really do have so many different people who have to sort of feed in feedback and perspective, to really make it the best that it can be, right? Because
Hmm.
you want it to reach the most readers, and so you really do have to be open to feedback, and that process then takes quite a long time, because I'm sure if I did it all by myself, it'd be a lot faster. But
Oh, I'm sure. Now, did you find that the feedback that you got that you really appreciated, that it worked much better, you think?
Oh, yes. I think that's like the one thing is that, when you're an artist and you're just like sort of in your tunnel vision as an artist, you fall in love with elements or whatever. And then somebody's like, yeah, I like it. But here's the thing is that it doesn't tell me this part of the story that I needed to tell, And so feedback is really important because any project that a person is working on, you can get tunnel vision, and especially a
Mm.
book, because there's so many different elements. It's not just a painting. It's like, My Powerful Hair, I think, has like 12 spreads in it. So, that's 12 separate pieces of work that have to be analyzed to make sure that they sort of address the narrative within the whole entire book, just not just as a piece of art by itself, but it has to like really work with everything else. And so, yeah, that feedback is really imperative, especially because I've never made children's books until recently. So having feedback from those people who are in the industry and know what works, that's invaluable to me. And I try to just like, take in as much as I can.
Right. So, what was the biggest challenge that you had in creating this book?
Um, I think the biggest challenge that will always be for me is representing emotion. I'm an autistic person, and so I have trouble recognizing human expression a lot of the time. And even though I am told that I'm a very emotive person, it's sometimes very difficult for me to interpret that from other people just due to my own disabilities. And so, learning to represent expression in children's books is really important because that's kind of what kids read, as their young kids don't have a huge vocabulary. So they really do rely
Mhm.
on those sort of nonverbal cues to tell
Right.
them how to feel. And so I really like learning that and implementing it into my illustrations to make sure that my characters were really strong, like had strong, clear emotions was really important, and something that as I was, sort of learning about those things, was also sort of learning about my own autism and like my own limitations, and why I'm like, oh, that's why I never understand. I never get the undertone because I'm not good with reading that kind of stuff. So in a way, it was good because I learned a lot about not only about myself, but also about bookmaking.
Wow. Okay, that's really fascinating that you're autistic and that you were able to really get the emotions down there.
I feel like I'm
Fabulous.
better at it now than I was in my first book. Now that I've made it through a couple more books, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm getting better at this thing.
Speaking of a couple more books,
Yes.
what can we expect from you in the near future?
So I am working on a few projects that I can't talk about yet, but the next one that will be coming out is the Fierce Aunties with Lori Goodluck, and it is just like it's going to be through Simon and Schuster, and it's just this beautiful celebration of powerful women and how those women in our lives, especially as young people, make such a huge impact on who we are and who we grow up to be. And so my work outside of being about Native culture specifically is about Native women and Native female empowerment, and also just female empowerment more broadly, because I am a feminist and really just like want all of the work that I do in this world to uplift women. And so that I'm just so excited. I'm just so excited for the story to come out because it is such a it's needed right now. I feel it, it's like women have been experiencing a lot of really strange stuff in this world. And so this story is about how women lift us up and how women are so important to the next generation in many different ways. And so yeah, it was really cool. I get to do these stories where I just get to celebrate the things that I love. And so I just feel so grateful and cannot wait for that book to come out. So
Wow. And you're working on a couple of others now too, huh?
yes, I am. Yes. Once those are public, I can talk about them. But yeah, I have like, I just got like my eighth book contract. So I have lots of
Eight?
books coming.
Wow. That's fabulous.
Yes. I know I went from one book last year to now I'm just like booked. So I'm very excited. It's like a dream come true to be working in the publishing industry. I just like never could have envisioned that it would have happened in this way and in such a like this beautiful sort of like again kismet. It's like it's just the universe put the paths down and I just happened to walk to the right crossroads. So I just feel really, really blessed to be working on such inspirational stories that I think will really inspire all kinds of people, not just kids, but any readers of any age will be able to appreciate these stories.
That's fabulous. Okay, now I have questions about being an artist. What
Oh
is your
yes.
favorite part of being an artist?
Probably the schedule, just cause no, I get to do whatever I want. I'm a working artist, so I make my own schedule. But I think what I'd say to people about being an artist, which is like my favorite thing truly, is that we make our own rules. And as an artist, I have this like it's not true, but people think I'm mysterious in some way because I make art. And so I sort of get to use that to my advantage. And that means that I get to break rules because people are like, oh, she's just a weird artist. And so it's like these stories, these books that I get to, that I help sort of envision. And like in the Fierce Aunties book, part of that was like representation. So I got to pick who all the aunties were, and I made sure that there was a black auntie in there because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just about what we would consider like sort of stereotypical indigenous representation, because
Mhm.
there are many black indigenous people in the world. And so as an artist, it's really cool to be able to sort of insert these things that have been missing. Like I've said, you see these things missing in the world, and actually I now am able to fill those gaps. And so there's a huge responsibility, but there is also this like great pride that I take as a sort of agitator in this world who gets to like go against the rules or do things subversively so that I can sneak in some representation of people who deserve to be represented. So yeah, I love being a rule breaker. I'm not a rule follower, and so this is a perfect sort of business for me to be in because it allows me to flourish in that way.
Hmm. Okay. So, what has been your favorite adventure during your career?
Oh my gosh. I'll say my most recent favorite adventure was my book tour with Carole Lindstrom.
Okay.
Our publisher sent us to go to these different places across the country. We got to visit New Orleans together, me and Carole. That's where we like really solidified our friendship, and we're like besties now. I love her so much, and I feel so blessed because you never, just as an artist working with an author, you can never count on building a friendship because you don't really get to interact with them necessarily that much. And so for me and Carole to be so like instantaneously like we were just like peanut butter and jelly. And so the book tour for me, getting to is to see Carole as a mentor in a way, to see how she acts as a New York Times bestselling author, to like get my first book tour to be with her is like crazy to me. So, especially as a person coming again from like a town of 500 people, like I traveled more in the last year to more states than I have in my entire life. And so, for me, the 2023 has been like the greatest adventure in many ways because I got to learn so much from Carole and also learn so much from all of these new places that I got to visit. And so yeah, last year generally and this book has just been like a dream come true. I've gotten to do so many things I never would have dreamed I could have done.
So, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned so far in your career?
Oh my gosh. Probably I would say the lesson that I continue to learn is that I am not perfect, and I can never, as much as I want to make perfect art, that perfection is inhuman and I am a human. And so I have to keep working to be better. It's like I was talking about with the expressions. Like when I was turning in my first illustrations for the book, I have so much gratitude to Emma, who was basically the person who helped edit and put all of this work together into a book at Abrams. And she just like she worked with such great patience to help me sort of get those representations right. And she didn't even know that she was helping an autistic person learn expressions, but that's what she did. And so, for me, it's like, oh, okay, there are things that even as an artist, no matter how much I practice, there will always be new things to learn. And that is a lesson, like as someone who is like a perfectionist, that I have to continue to learn, which is that I may not always get it right, but with the help and support of my community and those people that are generous who I work with, they help me learn and help me grow.
Okay. So, what piece of advice would you want to give to other artists or illustrators?
I say this all the time, which is get on Instagram. Instagram has absolutely been pivotal in changing my trajectory as an artist. So they did like a recent survey of gallerists who look at like who are bringing in new artists all the time for their galleries, and they were like, where do you find new artists? And they said half was from regular galleries that they went to visit elsewhere. The other
Mhm.
half was that found on Instagram. And so
Hmm.
people have, artists need to be on Instagram because it's essentially like a living portfolio, and it gives people who are making decisions about art the opportunity to discover your work. And so you need to be on social media, whether you like it or not, even if it just means sharing your work, like sharing static images of it, because then it is this place where you can be found. And it doesn't mean that you have to be like a content creator and do all that stuff, but really just sharing your process can make people fall in love with your work. That's what I found, is that people love to see the creative process, because it is, again, it's like this mystical process that no one knows about, when actually it's just me sitting on my couch drawing, you know? So sharing process, and just like, here's the thing is that, as an artist, if you want people to know about your work, you have to put it in a place where they can find you. Otherwise, no one will know that you exist. You'll just be making art on your couch. So really, if you want to be part of the world as an artist, and connecting with other creatives, social media is a great way to do that. Instagram being the sort of main platform, but
Mhm.
artists are doing it on TikTok now, and I know there's a strong artist community on Facebook as well. And so really just finding your community, that where they are. The indigenous community is really strong on Instagram, so that's a place where lots of natives can find their way to my work. And yeah, so sometimes it can be hard. Artists have a hard time with that part of it. I know I did, like documentation and all those things. But if you can just take a little bit of time out of your day to document your work and share it with the world, that it might lead to jobs. So that's my biggest suggestion.
It worked for you.
It did. It really did.
Yeah, great. So, are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you'd recommend to other illustrators that have helped you in your career?
I mean, I'll be honest. I am sort of a self-made illustrator, in that,
Okay.
I went to school for fine arts. I took one illustration class when I was in art school, and I was like, this is way too much drawing. I don't want to do this. And so I passed that class, and then I never went back to illustration. Here I am, a decade later as an illustrator. So um, I had to learn all of that because I sort of refused to do it in school. And so, what really helped me is the community of artists who are on YouTube. So, YouTube has an incredible community of artists who share all kinds of resources. A lot of the stuff that I paid to learn in art school, I could have learned for free on YouTube now. So that's one thing, is that the education has been diversified in this way that's really cool, because you can access stuff for free that you would have had to go to school or join a guild before. Now you can just go onto YouTube and type in, for me, it was like I needed to learn Procreate because I didn't really love working in Adobe. So I learned Procreate, and that's what I make all of my books in. And Procreate only costs $10 for life. So then once you have that software, you can just go on YouTube and type in Procreate tutorial and learn anything that you want, and then just start building your skill from there. So for me, I'm very much like a self-taught person. I like take initiative in that way. And so if you're an artist who loves art, then you kind of need to be that way as well. Is like, you want to seek out those resources. And what's really cool about the time that we are living in is that those resources are available for free. So YouTube is a great resource for artists wanting to learn like any type of process, from manual painting processes all the way to digital process.
That is amazing that you can get that much out of it.
I
YouTube
agree.
is just incredible. Okay, now I have questions about you as a person. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
Oh my gosh. Probably that, I think because I have a presence online, people like find me intimidating. And I'm actually just kind of a big nerd. My handle on Instagram is art nerd forever, and it's true that I really am just an art nerd who likes to hang out and paint and draw. And I'm much more of like a kind of a hermit person. I love people and serving my community, but a lot of the times I spend it alone. And so I am, a very sort of solitary human, and social media is where most of my human interactions happen. So I'm not an intimidating person at all. I'm just a dork artist. And, I try to be accessible to people because I really want my work to be accessible.
Hey, now, what question do you wish interviewers would ask you, and what would your answer be?
Hmm. I'm like, you've done some really good questions. I think, giving resources to artists is really important, especially for me as a young artist who before now, before the last couple of years, was not getting paid very well for my work, and is still, have people who want me to work for free and those sorts of things. And so, asking questions that sort of can advocate for us, that can help us sort of raise our value, I think is like really important, because while people love art, they don't necessarily value artists. And I've had to like try to command more from those people who want to engage with me, because I don't want them to engage with a younger native artist and think they can take advantage of them. And so asking those kinds of tough questions of like, how can we be better at serving artists so that they can do the magic that they do in this world? It's like we really need more supportive types of approaches to things. So
Okay. So what is or are your passions when you're not working? And how do you make time to do things that you love?
it's a great question. Well, I would say my passion has always been art, but I am sort of a lover of nature. And so when I'm not, working on a book, I'm going out into the world to like connect with nature, and, whether it's hiking or just like, being outside with the breeze and listening to the birds chirp. So, trying to remind myself of my connection to the earth is something that's really important in my day to day practice. I also have a tiny little chihuahua that I take care of and am obsessed with. His name is Potato. And, we love to go to the park. And I really am like, I have lived a life of chronic stress and trauma. And so much of the time that I spend now outside of my work as an artist is really trying to like heal my nervous system and just heal from the sort of pressures of capitalism. And so, also books. I love books. I buy books all the time. I have so many books that I haven't read, but I needed to have a copy of when I get ready to read them. So, yeah, if I'm not, I just like love to learn. And so I'm always learning and trying to sort of investigate the world around me in different ways through different lenses. And a lot of that has to do with reading about history and that sort of thing. Science, I am a huge fan of science and technology. I used to work for a big technology company as a writer. And so I'm very interested in how, AI works and all of those things. I hope someday in my future to do like an indigenous futurism graphic novel or something. So, I'm very much interested in like, the future of our world, and how humans will survive what we are currently sort of facing. And so, yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about those things and really just trying to enjoy what remains of the beautiful world that we have. So,
Oh yeah. Speaking of your dog, though, does your dog help you or hinder you when you're working?
luckily, he just sleeps a lot, so he doesn't hinder me. He only hinders me when I do my Etsy orders, because he doesn't like it when I sit at a desk, and so he will cry at me while I'm doing my Etsy orders. But other than that, he's good because he reminds me to take care of myself. A lot of the times I'll work for hours and hours without even like thinking about going to the bathroom. But because I have a dog, I'm like, oh, I have to like take care of this other thing outside of myself. And so by taking care of him, I sort of am reminded to take care of myself, which is good. So he's very good mostly.
So what does your studio space look like?
My studio space is basically my dining room, because I live in a one bedroom apartment. And so because I don't typically have guests over, I just use my dining room as a space. And it has a desk for my Etsy shop and whatnot, and lots of cabinets for all the stuff that I need. But then it's got an easel for when I rarely paint now. And but basically, because I'm a digital artist, I can work wherever I'm comfortable. So it very well might be right where I'm sitting right now on my couch.
Okay. And um do you need to have any food or drink, a specific food or drink with you when you're working?
Lots of coffee. I'm a big coffee person. So, especially coming from Portland, there's a big coffee culture there.
Oh,
So, I
yes.
love coffee. And so, usually throughout the day, I'm either drinking coffee or bubble water. Those are my two favorite go to drinks outside of water. So,
And when you're working, do you prefer music or silence? And if music, what kind?
yeah, I'm a big fan of making playlists for when I'm working because depending on what I'm working on, I can listen to music with lyrics if I'm not, say, writing. But if I am doing artwork, I tend to, I will listen to sort of upbeat music that sometimes has lyrics, but a lot of the times doesn't. There's this band from like the 50s called the Young Holt Experience, and they
Mhm.
basically, it's mostly instrumental, like sort of funky jazz. And so I love to listen to things like that where there isn't a ton of lyrics, but there's just like really sort of upbeat and sort of good feelings coming through the sound. And that's really important to me, is just like positive, uplifting music is a big part of my process for sure.
Okay. I just have two more questions for you. One, where can people find your book? Well, right now, you've only got the one book out, and you can find it at Annie's. And I have to do a plug for Annie's. You can get it at Annie's if you call us at 508-796-5613, or you can email us at Annie's orders at anniesbooksworcester.com. And where else can people find the book?
I was gonna say you can find it usually on any sort of bookstore online. So, I don't like to promote Amazon, but if you were to be desperate, you can definitely get a copy there. But yeah, a lot of independent bookstores online have websites. I love to support. I love to support small bookstores if I can. So, but yeah, they're pretty much anywhere that books are sold. I mean, I saw this in Target recently, so it's the book is all over the place. Luckily.
Oh, that's great. Okay. And my last question is, how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Oh, well, Instagram, if you really do want to follow my work and see what I'm doing day to day, that is where I share what I'm doing day to day. And I will give like little sneak peeks of books that I'm sketching on and things like that. So, Instagram, my handle on there is Art Nerd Forever. And, or you can just type in Steph Littlebird and you'll find me there. And otherwise, you can go to stephlittlebird.com. And yeah, I'm on most of the major social media platforms. I'm on TikTok. You can just go at Steph Littlebird to find me there as well. But yeah, luckily I have a social media presence, so you can actually follow me if you want to and see all the amazing work that I'm doing.
That sounds wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Steph. And I know that you are on the mock Caldecott list for possibly winning a Caldecott, we hope. And
Well, I just to be associated with that list alone, even as a mock Caldecott, is like pretty surreal as a first time book published person. So I'm very honored to even be associated with all of the talents on that list.
it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. So anyway, well, good luck with that. And we hope to see you around with all of your other books.
Yes, likewise. We can chat again later this year, maybe.
Yeah, that would be nice. Hey, Steph Littlebird, thank you very much.
Thank you.